A very good evening to all the participants. May I request welcome Arun Kumar Mathur ji, Vice President of Lucknow Management Association, to begin the proceedings for today's webinar, which is hosted for the members of Lucknow Management Association, Indian Industrial Association, and also the members and faculty of IISc. I welcome Dr. Firoz and Mr. Mathur and request him, Mr. Mathur, to please formally welcome our chief guest and the keynote speaker and begin the proceedings. Over to Mr. Mathur, please.
Thank you, Praveen. I have great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Amarjeet Singh, Executive Director, SEBI, and we are very happy that you are joining this program, jointly being organized by Oak India Foundation and Lucknow Management Association. I have great pleasure in introducing Mr. Amarjeet Singh. He's working with SEBI for last 25 years and has extensive experience in regulation and supervision of security markets. Between 210 and 217, he was heading the front office of the chairman SEBI as his executive assistant and also the Office of International Affairs. Mr. Singh has been involved in various international regulatory initiatives. He has acted as Sherpa for SEBI's representation on the board of International Organization of Security Commission. Mr. Amarjeet Singh represents SEBI as a part-time member of the board of National Financial Reporting Authority and on the board of governors of the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. During 1718, he was on the board of National Institute of Security Markets, an institute founded by SEBI. Mr. Amarjeet Singh represented SEBI on numerous committees set up by the Reserve Bank of India and the Government of India in recent years. His nomination on such committees include member of Committee on Core Investment Committee set up by RBI in 2019, a post-ILFS fiasco. Apart from an MBA, he holds a master's degree in economic policy management from Columbia University, New York, USA. He's a member of the India Advisory Board, Newcastle University Business School, UK. He is recipient of Rotary Foundation Educational Award 2000 for promoting leadership and development and international understanding by Rotary International. Besides Mr. Amarjeet Singh, we have also Mr. Jeevan Sonoparotri. Have I pronounced correctly? I don't know. Well, he'll be making a presentation on the subject, and he joined SEBI in 1995. He's the Chief General Manager, and he has been with Secondary Market Department, Investigation Department, Office of the Investors Awareness and Education, Foreign Institutional Investors, and Office of the Public Chief Public Information Officer. And he's now with the Corporate Finance Department. He'll be making a presentation, and I would request him to kindly start his presentation. Thank you.
May we request first, I'm sorry to intervene, Shri Amarjeet Singh sir, to because I learned from him that he has a meeting. So if he could do his brief address on the subject, if that's in order, sir.
Oh, that would be
Sure. Praveen, would you like me to start, Praveen? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are.
Yes, sir. You're audible. You're audible.
All right. Okay. No, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mathur, and thank you, Praveen, for making me a part of this event. It's a pleasure. So let me, begin by, first of all, complimenting the government of UP and also all the other stakeholders for a hugely successful bond issuance, recent bond issuance by Lucknow Municipal Corporation. I think it was to the tune of 200 crores, which was oversubscribed. And I believe this was the first municipal bond issuance from North India to be listed on Bombay Stock Exchange. And with this, I believe Lucknow has become the 9th city in the country to have got its municipal bonds listed on Bombay Stock Exchange. So turning to my brief remarks, so I will, do it in two parts. One is I would like to share with you a broader sense of how securities markets are actually delivering on the economic objective of capital formation. So capital formation, as we all understand, is very critical for growth of any economy, and how securities markets are contributing to that objective. That is one part of my brief address. And secondly, I would like to talk very briefly about what SEBI has done in the recent past in the primary market space. What has been SEBI's regulatory response to the various primary market trends, not only just in India but also abroad. So let me begin with a very brief mention about the global trends. To start with the global trends, over the last 20 years, if you see, globally the number of listed companies in all, total number of listed companies, if you take all the important world markets together, it shows an increasing trend. The number of listed companies have increased. But let me very quickly qualify, this growth has been very static. What I mean by that is that either the number has more or less remained the same or increased very, very marginally. So, but also the trends vary by region, depending on where you are. In Asia, for example, the number of listed companies have increased. And if you look at North America and Europe, you find that the number of listed companies have actually gone down. And just to give you an example from the US market, there were about 8,000 listed companies in 1996 in US. And this number became only 4,400 in 2018, which was down by 45%. So over a span of roughly 22 years, the number of companies have almost become half of what they used to be. So decline in number of, but at the same time, if you look at the volumes of capital raised from the markets, they are not declining, they have gone up. So decline in number of listings coupled with increase in amount mobilized, that gives you a very clear discernible trend that the average IPO size world over has increased. And that is the case in India also. You don't find many small issuances anymore other than the SME segment. But you find the number of listings are not so many, but the average size of offering has gone up. And so one could ask, what is the reason for slowdown in the growth of IPO market globally? I'm not talking about India. India is a different case, and we'll come to that in a minute. So there's one very important supply side explanation, which we have to, those who are interested in primary markets, they need to understand that. That is a shift in equity capital from public markets to private markets. So today, private equity market seems to be substituting the public equity market. So that is on the supply side. Another very important trend which we need to be mindful of is on the demand side. And what is that trend? So again, staying on the global picture, in US markets especially, again, US, why we have to refer to it, because that is the, the most developed and, and the most grown and with the largest history in terms of number of years, etc. And that is the US market, and it's the biggest market in the world. So the capital light model in US, that is replacing the capital intensive model. So, you are finding today that what do I mean by this? Today, the intellectual and human capital, that is becoming more important. Many tech companies have developed and thrived on powerful ideas rather than the old model of building plant and machinery, a lot of equipment and so on. So that model is giving way to a very asset light. You could start a company in a garage. You just need some computers. You need somebody who can write the codes, and you could be having very, very high valuation in case your idea clicks, and in no time, you would have grown many-fold. So many tech companies have developed and thrived on powerful ideas, as I was trying to say. Just to give you again a comparative perspective, in 2009, if you look at the top 10 listed companies of the world by market cap, if you take all important markets and list top 10 companies which were there in 2009, you will find there was only one tech company out of those top 10 companies in the world. And that company's name was Microsoft. 10 years later, 2019, if you see which are the top 10 companies in the world by market capitalization, you find that the 7 of these top 10 companies today in 2019, they were tech companies. And these are all household names today. Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Alphabet, Facebook, Alibaba, and Tencent. So this just shows how there are shifts in the economy, in the kind of companies which are listing world over. So this trend is not very visible in our part of the world, where still our companies, need tons of capital for, doing various projects. Of course, the tech sector is growing in India also, but this kind of boom, we still have to wait and watch. Let me now quickly turn to the trends in India. So in India, unlike other parts of the world, unlike North America and Europe, I should say, we've been witnessing an increase in the number of companies that are listed on our stock exchanges. However, the rate of increase, the growth, again, seems to be slowing down, if I can say. But on absolute basis, year to year, we've been showing a good increase. We have 4 sources of raising of equity from primary markets in our country. These are IPOs, public offerings, rights issues, and then we have qualified institutional placements, which is more of a private sort of a placement where company issues securities to institutional buyers like mutual funds, financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, and so on. That's a private placement. And also another important source is preferential allotments, where again, the company can issue shares to any person or any group of persons on a private placement basis. Just to give you some numbers, and I'm sure Jeevan will elaborate, give you a more detailed view on the data. But just to give you some quick numbers on each of these instruments. So in terms of, if you look at, when I say that primary market, so what do I mean by that? Primary market means all these 4 sources of raising of funds. And if you aggregate the money raised from all these four sources, so you find that in 2018-19, about 3 lakh crore was raised in 18-19 from all these four sources taken together. In the current financial year, we have touched about 1.7 lakh crore up to date. Despite this being a difficult year, the numbers are looking good. This is, this compares well if you take the period, up to December, and we still have 3 more months to go. In terms of another important trend in our market, and which is again kind of gels well with the other parts of the world in our primary market when it comes to public issuances, IPO. So if you look at the breakup of the public issuances, one is fresh raising of money, fresh raising of capital for the purpose of investment. And second part is offer for sale, where the promoters or institutions or the big investors, they are simply offloading their shares in the market through a prospectus. So what we found in the last few years is that almost 75% every year is offer for sale in the market. So what I'm saying is not many companies are coming to the market for raising fresh capital for the purpose of investment, but they are listing and they are using the stock markets for providing an exit to existing investors or promoters. That's another important trend to be aware of. Then both the private placement markets are qualified institutional placements and preferential issues. They are more popular for fundraising. If you look at the overall picture, they account for almost 75% of the fundraising during 2019 and 20. I should mention, specifically mention about the rights issues. So during the last 2 years, our experience has been in our markets, there has been very good traction for rights issues, a good demand for rights issues. A sum of rupees 56,000 crores was raised through 17 rights issues during 1920. And in the current financial year, we've already surpassed that number, and now we have 61,000 crores has been raised through 15 rights issue up to this month so far. So I will talk a little bit more about the reforms that we brought about in rights issue in a minute. Now let me, this was one part of, basically the global trends, some of the high level trends, I would say, and also some trends of fundraising in our market. Now let me move to the second part of my address in terms of what has been the regulatory response in this space. What has SEBI in particular done in the area of primary markets in the last couple of years? So first thing that we need to understand is that as a part of our developmental agenda for primary markets, we recognize the need for having, or developing multiple paths for raising of funds from the market. So as I already mentioned, you have IPOs, then you also have further public offerings, rights issues, preferential allotments, qualified institutional placements. Then we also have a SME platform. So these are some of the well-known methods of fundraising in our markets. And as I said, depending on the needs of the issuer can choose the path it needs to, raise money from the market. Talking about this year in particular, as we all know, we've been, the COVID had its impact in the Indian economy like anywhere else in the world. So its economic dimension has been huge. So world over, the monetary authorities, governments, and the regulators have tried to deal with largely two issues, I would say, from the securities market standpoint, dealing with the liquidity issues in the market and dealing with the solvency issues. So at SEBI, actually, we were very busy, I would say. This year was very busy for us because we had to respond to these challenges in the market. And we came up with a number of temporary relaxations for fundraising through IPOs. We picked up each of these instruments and we saw that, what is it that we can do to make fundraising easier? And we introduced some temporary and some permanent changes in each of these streams of IPOs, rights issues, and preferential issues and QIPs and so on. But wherever we issued relaxations, I must also add here, we were very mindful that these relaxations have to be accompanied with the required checks and balances from the investor's point of view. So to ensure the interest of investors is not compromised. So we kept that in mind while we introduced those changes. I'll not go into the details of those measures because in the interest of time, it's a huge long list, but all the details are available. In fact, on SEBI website, you will find a separate section dealing with what SEBI has done in response to COVID. So let me talk very briefly again about some of the other important reforms that we've introduced recently. These has nothing to do with COVID, but I'll just make a mention because these are important reforms. So one area where we have in the last, I would say almost a year or so, we've been working on making the rights issue stream more attractive for issuers. So what we've done is some reforms have already been introduced. We've revamped the entire rights issue process, and which is aimed to bring down the listing period from T+55 to T+31. That means that after the rights issue is over, we've shortened the time period for listing by 15 days. Very important reform, not many people are aware, and it needs more advocacy to make that popular, is the rights entitlement, the DMAT of rights entitlement and trading of rights entitlement. So that's been a huge, huge change or reform, as I would like to call it, which has brought in a new segment in the rights issue space, which was not there, which was there earlier technically, but it was not really very active because it was a physical platform, which we have now replaced it with online trading and DMAT. We've done away with minimum subscription requirement in certain cases. That again is a huge step. We've reduced the disclosure requirements for rights issues because these companies are already listed. So you don't have to have very huge disclosure requirement. We've liberalized the eligibility requirements for fast track issuance, fast track rights issuances. So that was about the rights issue. I'll just mention a couple of other initiatives before I conclude. One, from the IPO perspective, we've introduced, and that reform is still work in progress actually, we've introduced the use of UPI in IPOs. So basically, the idea is to make the process more efficient from investors' point of view and also reduce the listing period from T+6, presently it's T+6 to T+3. So that, as I said, now all applications in the IPO market from the retail investors have to be done through UPI, and it seems to be working well so far. But as I said, this is still a work in progress. Secondly, I would just quickly mention about one discussion paper. SEBI follows this process of consultation on every reform. So as a part of that, we introduced, we actually came out with a discussion paper earlier this week on Monday that relates to Innovators Growth Platform. So this relates to listing of startups in our market. And this actually, the changes that we are proposing in this framework, Innovators Growth Platform, this is called Innovators Growth Platform. We've proposed certain changes to make it more attractive for startups to list in our country. And one interesting innovative feature of this platform from the investor's standpoint is the introduction of the concept of accredited investors. which will allow individuals, high net worth individuals, to invest in startup at an early stage. So let me now sort of conclude. Our reforms in the primary market are actually aimed at improving ease of raising of funds, thereby contributing to the overall growth of capital formation, which I mentioned in the beginning. So as a regulator, in my personal view, we are, and actually SEBI has been doing that pretty well, I would say. We are open to introduction of new and evolving products and business models, but at the same time, it is our duty to manage the risks that such products bring about and preserve investor protection. That is the main mandate of SEBI. To conclude, the online forums like this provide a window of engagement with stakeholders across the country. It will be a pleasure to see greater participation of the industry and companies from UP in our securities market. Let me again thank Avok India Foundation, particularly Praveen Dwivedi, for taking this initiative to organize this event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amarjit Singh. Now I'll invite the Chief General Manager SEBI, Mr. Jeevan, to kindly make his presentation. Mr. Jeevan, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon to you. I'm here.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening. So, just simply say good evening to you. Dwivedi ji, आपको दिख रहा है सर? Screen is.
Hi, sir. Yeah, we can see this very well and audible also. No issues.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Sir, thank you again, once again, for having us here and hearing us out on this particular issue. The perspective that I am providing is the trends in the primary issuances market. While a global perspective already provided by Mr. Amarjit Singh, what I am just trying to give you is the Indian perspective, and we'll just try to touch upon briefly the regulation concerning primary issuances issued by, and especially the SEBI regulation. Giving a brief overview on what exactly I will not take so much of your time. It's almost half an hour, 45 minutes I'll be spending. 20 slides I have in my presentation. So the agenda that I'm covering is issues and listing in capital markets, the conditions for public issues. Then we have disclosure requirements. We will also touch upon the IPO process. Then what we will talk about is the trends and some of the reforms that already Mr. Amarjit Singh has already mentioned. I will touch upon some of them too. So again, coming to what. How did primary issuance? Somebody who is in the primary market would definitely know the year 1992 for the simple reason that SEBI came into being and there was a big dhamaka that controller of capital issues was repealed and SEBI was put in place. So we saw a spate of issuances that came in during that particular time. As on a particular date when SEBI Act was promulgated, by the way, it was promulgated by an ordinance. So at that point of time, SEBI had no regulations on primary issuances. So from a merit-based regulation that was there in the Controller of Capital Issues (CCI) to the disclosure-based regime that SEBI came into being. So we provided something called as a Disclosure and Investor Protection Guidelines. So it's called DIPS for short. So we came out in 1992 and we carried on with this DIP regulations for a long time. In 2000, we consolidated all the DIP guidelines and then we put it into a regulation very recently. So as on date, we have a regulation called Issue of Capital and Disclosure Requirements Regulation 2018. So you will see on our website, the latest issuances and the latest amendments that we have made to this regulation would be available on our website. So again, coming on track to the agenda. So if we are looking at the mode of issuances, as Mr. Amarjit also mentioned, there are various issuances that are possible. The initial public offering, then follow-on public offering is where a listed company makes further issue of capital. That's called a follow-on public offering. Then a listed company issues shares to its own shareholders. That's the rights issuance. And preferential issuance is to either a select group or select promoters. That is the preferential issue. It's kind of a private placement. So is the qualified institutional placement. So fundraising at various life cycle stages that we are having here is we will start off from what we are saying IPOs, where we are having shares, then we are having share warrants, partly convertible or fully convertible debentures. Those are the convertibles we are having. Then we are having the various modes like we spoke about, private placement, follow-on public offer, rights and QIP. So as a regulator, whenever we say that it's a market where we are interfacing the investors and the companies. So people who are in need of funds and people who need this, who are in need of funds and people who want to invest. So we are a market which matches the needs and demands of these two people. So how do we do it? So if you see it from a market perspective or a regulator's perspective, we have to ensure that the investors' interests are protected because the preamble of SEBI Act gives primacy to the protection of investors' interests. So whenever we say what is an eligibility, the first things that comes to our mind is we have to define who are not eligible. So I'll just come to that slide first. So who are not eligible to raise money from the capital market are promoter or directors who have been debarred from operating in the securities market, either by SEBI or any other agency. Not a willful, that the promoter or a director is not in the willful defaulters list. He should not be a willful defaulter. He should also not be a fugitive economic offender. And he should also not be a director of a company which has been debarred. And otherwise all its partly paid up or convertible shares are converted as on the date of the issue. So now coming back to the issuance, the eligibility criteria for issues. So there could be companies that are in need of funds and they could be categorized at basically two, those that have profits and those that do not have profits. So the first option is where we have defined it's got a profitability. They satisfy some of the profitability criteria, which is mentioned here. It says that if you have a net tangible asset of 3 crores in preceding 3 years, then you will be eligible under this option 1. I'll come to the options that we have going ahead. Then average operating profit 15 crores and above, and a net worth of almost ₹1 crore in each of the preceding 3 years. So this is option. So these are the various things in the option 1 is for profitability. Second option is where if you don't meet any of this criteria, then there is a second option. So let's look at the options that are there. So let's see the options that are available for allocation are where option 1 allows you to have 2 kinds of modes to issue. One, you can go through the book build route, or you can go through the other than the fixed price issue. So as of now, the most prevalent mechanism for issuance of IPOs is the book build route. There are hardly been any issuances under the fixed price route. And the option 2 is only the book build issue. Again, we have to understand why this particular demarcation has been made. And if you see the context, you see this bifurcation in the context of allocation that we have been determined, that in the option 1, minimum 50% has to minimum 50% is to be to QIBs, out of which 5% has to be given to the QIBs is qualified institutional buyers, and your minimum 5% of that is provided to the mutual funds. And 35% allocation is reserved for retail investors. In contrast to this, if you see for a loss-making company which is coming out with a book build route, it has been mentioned that the QIB portion has to be at least 75%. So that's the kind of comfort that we want the investors to have when they are investing in a loss-making company, that QIBs have put their money in this particular IPO, so that there should be some assurance to them that this should be a issue that will sail through. Going ahead on the issue of what should be the issue size and how much of it should be a minimum offer to the public, I just wanted to give you some input on as to if it were to be a project finance company or a company which has a project that is going on for which it is looking for finance, then at least 75% of means of finance has to be clearly identified and has to be maintained by it. Only for the remainder of the 25%, it will need to come to the public to raise capital. In that case, the minimum public offer to the minimum issuance to the public will be as determined under the SCRR, which says that if the post-issue market capitalization is more than is up to 1,600 crores, then at least 25% of the issue should be made to the public. So, and the second criteria is that if your issue is between 1,600 to 4,000 crores, post-issue market cap is 1,600 to 4,000 crores, then the percentage of the issuance to the public should be within the range from 25 to 10, where at least the issue size will be at least 400 crores. And post-market capitalization of more than 4,000 crore companies, the big size companies, then it should be at 10%. Incidentally, we have now floated a consultation paper last week where we have tried to address companies which are very big, considering that they would be more than 10,000 or 1 lakh crore, where we have gradually stepped down the requirement for people to issue their capital. So let's, for example, take a company like LIC, which is a government company that the government want to divest its stake. So it were to come with a issuance of a minimum 10% offering to be made to the public, it would be a huge issue. So we may face challenges whether the market may have the depth to absorb such a large issue if it were to be made by LIC. So catering to some kind of request or need of the market to have a lower threshold for minimum offer to public, we are trying to gather views and consult market and stakeholders to see what could be the appropriate percentage or a threshold for very large issuances. The consultation paper is available on the website of SEBI. In case you are interested, probably you can go through that, and if you have any comments to offer, we would welcome such comments. So when we are talking of a public issue, when we are talking for a public issue, we also need to know that what exactly is a public issue. So if we analyze from a very layman standpoint, it is a dream of the promoter that he's selling to the shareholders. So it's a proposition from the promoter side that, look, this is the project I'm having, and this is how I am seeing this project grow in the next 3 to 4 years. And if you were to invest in this particular project, this is the kind of growth you may be able to see. So this is a kind of projection made by the promoter. But given that he's making this commitment or this promise or proposal in a regulatory space, we also want that whatever the promoter is saying, he is also able to implement. So we have something called as a promoter skin in the game. So it's called something called as a promoter's contribution. So for any issuance that comes to the public, wherever promoters are involved, the promoter will have to keep at least 20% of his shares locked in for at least 3 years from the date of the public issue. and the excess of 20% that he may be having in the company, that will be locked in for a period of 1 year from the date of allotment or the publication. And this is the main criteria, that this is again an assurance, and this has come from various learnings we had in the initial stage when we tackled the rights issue in 1992-1994, where a lot of fly-by-night operators came and looted money from the public and just vanished without a trace. So the attempt to have lock-in for promoters' contribution was to ensure that promoters stay committed to the project, stay committed to the company, and ensure that the project or the purpose for which, or the objects for which the money has been raised is satisfied by him in that particular 3-year, 4-year scenario. So, as we have said, that when we are looking for a disclosure regime, if you look at the disclosure, the ICDR regulation, there are 300 regulations in ICDR. It's a big fat book, but the entire stress of the book is mainly on disclosures. So what should a company disclose? And this has come over a period of time. So we have learned by experience, through mistakes we committed probably. We also learned by inputs that we got and interactions. Some of the disclosures that came in are fairly recent ones. The ones that we have are old ones which were revised over a period of time. So the entire regime that SEBI operates as far as the issuance is concerned is only disclosure based. So needless to say, our stress is only on disclosures. You have to disclose. Our principle that we adopt when we talk of an IPO is that you should disclose whatever is correct information, accurate information, and it should come to the public domain as soon as is possible. So this disclosure, the responsibility of disclosure is prevalent across all regulations of SEBI. So if you look at the ICDR regulation, which is for issuances, or when you go ahead and you go to the listing obligation and disclosure regime, there again you have a disclosure, the stress is on disclosure. You look at prohibition of insider trading, again everything is on disclosure and information. If you see, even in the securities market today, what is traded is just information. So what we offer under the document, or the IPO document, or the offer document issued by the promoter or the company, is loads of information for the investor to take a educated decision or a informed decision to invest or not to invest in that particular company. So let us look at what are the disclosures that we cover in the entire document. So there are under about 5 to 6 heads of these we will just see. So risk factors are disclosed in you may have seen a bulky document. It's almost sometimes none of them would be less than 200 or 300 pages. So most of them would be are necessarily required to contain these heads of disclosures. Risk factors, which are internal to the company, which are external to the company. The capital structure, entire history of the shareholding, pre and post, the build-up of the promoter, their promoter history, their group holding, all is required to be disclosed. The objects of the issue has to be disclosed. Then in terms of if an issue has been made, 25% of the issue size can be kept aside for general corporate purposes. So that also has to be provided. Objects of the issue is very, very crucial to the entire issue, because this is the promise you are making. You are making a statement to the investors that I am raising this money, and the money that I have raised from you will be deployed for a particular purpose. So this is one of the most critical issues that we will see once the issue has been listed, and it will be monitored by the stock exchange as to whether the objects are being satisfied, whether the monies that have been raised under the IPO have been utilized for this particular purpose or not. So this particular objects clause becomes the main focus when we examine documents from SEBI's perspective, and when stock exchanges monitor the deployment or the utilization of the IPO proceeds after the company has been listed on the stock exchange. Then the IPO document contains a brief description of the business space that the company or services of that particular entity is there, its products, who are its competitors, who are its, who may be a threat to them. All these things are covered in the business portion of the disclosure. Then about management, board of directors, committee, details of key managerial persons, any action taken by SEBI or any other regulatory agency against them, everything is required to be disclosed. In fact, on the stock exchanges, you will require these board of directors or promoters would also be required to file their identity documents, because that is a requirement that the exchange will not allow you to list unless you have you prove your identity. So all these identity documents will be filed by the exchange, filed with the exchange by the companies coming out the IPO. So history of shareholder agreements, any special rights or something like that, that if it is there already subsisting, that will have to be disclosed. Any corporate matters, any litigations, that will have to be mentioned. Financial statements, the most crucial part, the other crucial part of the entire document is going to be the financial statement, where it is required to be in terms of the Indian standards, as well as it has to be restated. If it is not, it has to be restated for the last 3 years, 4 years. That has to be done. Outstanding litigations, wherever the promoters, directors, or group companies or the company is involved in any litigation, that litigation and its consequences are required to be mentioned in the IPO offer document. Then terms of the issue are basically guidance as to how for an investor as to how to apply, what are the procedures for application and otherwise for applying to the public offering. We'll just look at the intermediaries or the entities that are involved in an IPO. So what is, we know as far as SEBI is concerned, we speak to an agency, to an intermediary called a merchant banker. So the merchant banker is required. Any company coming out with an IPO is required to appoint a merchant banker. So the process is there in the next slide. I'm just giving you a brief overview of what are the key entities or intermediaries in an IPO. So we have a book running a lead manager, BRLM. Then we have the registrars, we have the bankers to the issue, and we have the brokers and the syndicates, and not to miss the exchanges where the bidding takes place. So let's look at the IPO process now. The IPO process talks about, as I mentioned, any company coming out with an IPO is required to appoint a merchant banker. So as far as SEBI is concerned, SEBI will interact only with the merchant banker. We have rarely had an occasion to interact directly with the company. The merchant banker is an expert in the field, he is a professional. He is supposed to guide the company. He is supposed to provide due diligence certificate to SEBI saying that he has seen the regulations of SEBI and the document that has been filed by SEBI meets with the requirements of law as far as the ICDR is concerned. So all these requirements are made by the book running lead manager, by the lead manager to the issue, and then he drafts the prospectus, red herring prospectus, which is filed with SEBI and the stock exchanges, and then before opening the issue, he will have to file this prospectus with the ROC before opening the particular issue. The book will be billed when the issue opens. The issue is open for a period of 3 days. In case there is a problem that the issue is not able to succeed or is not garnering subscription, there is a provision where this can be extended by another 3 days, provided you revise your price. So price allocation, again, this is the other focus that Mr. Amarjit was talking about, that we are currently on a T+6 IPO listing regime, where when the issue is closed on a T day, it takes 6 days for the issue to be listed. So that period we want to reduce. Recently, you would have also come across a paper put out by the Singapore Securities Authority, where they would like to shift it from a T+3 current regime that they are doing to a T+1 regime. So that means if the issue closes today, and they will be able to list the company on the next day. So that, I think, in an Indian perspective would be very difficult, because if you see the kind of intermediaries or the kind of participation we have in the Indian market, is much, much wider than what you have in Singapore, because there are not more than 4 or 5 banks in Singapore. And most of the institutional investors would be the real investors in the IPO of Singapore. And this is one of the contrasts that Indian market has vis-a-vis what Mr. Amarjit mentioned about the global market. Let's say, for example, US. The US is not actually an IPO market. In the US, what happens is that the company approaches a merchant banker, and the merchant banker takes shares from the company, and then it offloads it to the public. So there's a time gap between when the shares will be taken by the merchant banker from the investment banker or merchant banker from the company, and then offloaded down to the institutional. Again, the institutional space is more wider in the US. So you will find very few retail investors in the US market who are directly investing in an IPO. They would be mostly either pension funds, mutual funds, or AIFs that would be investing in the IPOs of US. If you contrast that with what we have in India, then sheer numbers that we are talking of for any public issue that we are having is humongous. In fact, the very fact that we have reserved 35% of a public issue to be made only to a retail investor, it's a mind-boggling number. So just imagine if we have an issue where LIC comes in for an IPO, the number of investors that would be investing is going to be really one of the biggest figures that we will be able to flaunt when it comes through. So that is the biggest, I shouldn't say constraint, but this is one of the features of the Indian market where we may not be able to achieve a T+1 target, but definitely T+3 is achievable, and we should be able to see some progress in this in the next 1 year or so. By this time next year, we should be on a T+3 cycle. So this is about the book build issue. I'll just explain what exactly is a book build issue, where it's a process where investors will bid on the exchange platform, and the price range has already been given by the issuer in the prospectus. So once it has been announced, then the investors have the prerogative to key in their bids either at the floor price, at the price which is the issue price, or it can be determined by whatever price they would want between the price band that has already been mentioned to them. So the entire process is electronic. For 3 days, people can bid, they can withdraw if they don't like to. Even until the last day, they'll be able to withdraw their bids. At the end of the last day is where we will determine whether the success or failure of the issue is there based on the proportion of bids that the IPO has been able to attract. So at least minimum 90% is required to be subscribed to by for the particular issue to be deemed to be a successful issue. So after the third day is over, then the allocation methodology and the allotment methodology will come out, and then it will be determined based on the already mentioned algorithm. The investors will get their allotment. In the recent past, we have seen that issues have been oversubscribed 139 times. I believe the last issue that we saw was subscribed 139 times on the first day of the application, on the first day of the opening of the issue itself. So there have been some successes. Despite COVID times, we have seen huge issues that have come through, including one of the largest rights issue made by Reliance. So that is the kind of traction we are having in the primary issuances market. I'm just going forward and reflecting to you the trends that are there in the primary market. So let's look at the money raised from the primary market as of now. So if you see the issues that which Mr. Amarjit also mentioned briefly, if you look at the rights issue, it has been a very big success this year. Also because it was easier to make a rights issue to the investors rather than go through the public. It's also a quicker way of raising money from the capital market. The difference between a rights issue and a follow-on offer has become very less now, for the simple reason as Mr. Amarjit mentioned, rights issue has now rights issue and rights issue entitlement have been dematted. So once you are making a rights issue is made to a shareholder of the particular company. The shareholder, if he wants to accept or he wants to subscribe to the rights issue, can do so, or he can give away the entitlement to somebody else. So he can trade his entitlement. He gets an entitlement. As a shareholder, I'll get an entitlement to subscribe to the rights issue. So I can trade that entitlement and give it to somebody else. So that somebody else is any person in the securities, in the secondary market. I can go to my broker and surrender my entitlement through the demat, and it can be transferred to somebody else. So it becomes an offer to a public. So it no longer remains a offer to the same shareholder, to the shareholder of that particular company. So that's why there is a very fine difference now left, very little difference left between what a rights issue is and what is a follow-on public offer. So if you see rights issue in the year for the period April 2020 to December 11, 2020, we have raised almost about 60,000 crores. 60,000 crores in 15 issuances. So that is one thing. And the other trend that we are seeing is that the preferential issue in this year has reduced drastically, and obviously for various reasons, because there has been a stress on everybody, including the promoters, to subscribe to the preferential issue. So there has been a very less issuances of preferential issue in this particular year. So also for if you and as contrast to that, if you see the qualified institutional placement where institutions or institutions have picked up stake is comparable to what we had in the previous year, April 2019 to March 2020. I'm just going to the other side to just to dwell on what is the issue size. As Mr. Amarjit mentioned, while the amount has increased over a period of time, the number of issues have reduced. So that generally would indicate that the issues have become larger in size, and thus that is the trend that we are seeing. And I'll just go to another slide which will show us the size distribution for at least 54 issues that we did a study on for a six-year period from April 2014 to September 2020, where if you can see the large number of issuances have happened in the excess of 40,000 to 80,000 post issue. So going forward on the 54 issuances that we saw, which were very large issuances, we'll see that the free float that we have on the quarter-on-quarter basis, once that they were listed, the average trading volume. So this is again, people from economics will know that this is a recency effect. So if you see the average trading volume in the shares of this particular company when the company came with a public issue is highest when it is listed. But over a period of time, it wanes. So let's look at an example where average daily is the third row. Average daily trading volume was in Q0, that is the quarter in which it was listed, was 50 lakhs. But by the time it was in the end of the year, so let's say 4 quarters down, it was just 2.8 lakhs. So this shows a very this is again a trend, because if you see this in conjunction with the next slide, which I'll just show you, it shows a shift from retail participants handing over their shares to institutional investors. So I'll just come to the next slide. But again, going back to number of shares, again, that's the fourth row, we'll see that the number of shares being traded is 4.4 crores. And the next, by the end of the year, the number of shares have increased, because what has happened is that institutions or investors who were there prior to the IPO, where their investment lock-in has been removed, have released their shares, and now they are available for trading. So going forward with the trend in this particular market for that 6-year period, we will see that the average total number of public shareholders have reduced. And this shows that probably, so number of shares have increased, but the number of investors have reduced. That again is because the public investors' shares have been either bought by mutual funds or other institution or pension funds or insurance funds. So that the shift from the public investors or shareholders, retail investors have taken place to have been picked. The stakes of the retail investors have been picked up by the institutions like mutual funds and insurance. So some of the measures that Mr. Amarjit mentioned about UPI UPI is the first step towards gaining some kind of traction or moving to a T+3 mechanism. Because if you see today in India, we have almost about 200 plus banks, and investors would be across so many banks. So today, if a retail investors want to invest, he may have account in any of these banks, and he needs to route his money to the broker and to the stock exchange and to the banker to the issue his account. So all this process needs to be completed in a very short time of 6 days. So for this particular thing to happen, we have decided that we should have an electronic mode of ensuring that the money moves through a very efficient mode. And that is why we latched on to what is called as UPI. That's a this is again by the NPCI has come out with this UPI. People who would be aware of payment mechanisms like Phone Pay, Google Pay, Bheem Pay, they would know what an UPI is. For the simple, it's a wallet that is there on your phone. So this has practically enabled anybody or any person who is having a broking account, basically without going to a broker or without going to a banker, on the mobile app of the broker, he can simply go and invest in that particular IPO. Earlier, there were times when people had to wait in queues to excuse me, collect either forms or submit their forms for investment in an IPO. So this entire process now has become so automated or so tech savvy that if an investor is registered with a stockbroker, he can simply open the broker's app on his mobile phone, and within 2 clicks, his money or his investment decision to invest in that IPO is communicated is bid on the platform and also confirmed to the bank to deduct or to block his money in his securities account. So this is one mode. There was earlier a mechanism where investors had to actually release the money into the account of the company and then after the issuance has come, allotment was made, he used to get a refund. So since that there was a lot of movement of money to the company and then back from the company as a refund process, we decided to adopt a mechanism called ASBA. There is an application supported by block amounts. So the money doesn't shift out of or get transferred out of the investor's account. What actually happens is that the amount remains blocked with the investor's account, which is where he continues to earn the interest, the savings interest or whatever interest he's having on that particular account. And only in case of a confirmation that he has been allotted a share, only to the extent that the money is required, that will be transferred on a particular date to the company in its account. So that is how efficient the system has become right now. And with the UPI introduction of UPI ASBA, this we have translated to a electronic and a wallet in a wallet form. Mr. Amarjit mentioned about streamlining the rights issue process. While we are shifted from T+55 to T+13, there is a scope for further improvement here. Another 15 days, another 7 to 8 days can be cut off from this, and you may find that some announcement will come in the coming weeks on this particular issue. because the government has already decided to reduce the open offer time for this particular rights issue process. In the rights issue issuances, since like we said earlier, since the rights issue is only to the shareholders of the particular company, so we have decided to do away a lot of other restrictions that were already there in our regulations, like your audit qualification was there, you couldn't have made a fast track rights issue and all that. All those issues, given the COVID times, we decided to review it and streamline the process and make it more efficient way of raising capital by the company from its shareholders itself. Innovators Growth Platform is something that Mr. Amarjit spoke, and also it is available on our website. So interested people can actually go through this and see what exactly how we are incentivizing companies that may be software unicorns in the making. So we may have traction on this where somebody like Swiggy or Ola may like to come and raise capital from accredited investors on this particular platform. What we have also done is that scheme of arrangement. What the COVID times has already done to most of these companies is that they have found a way. They have been forced to restructure themselves. So restructure themselves, either merging their subsidiary into them or merging their group companies into each other, so that they can achieve economies of scale and they can have better synergies when they are in a merged entity, or probably shelve off or some of their activities to somebody else. The recent one that you would have heard about is about Future Retail being sold off to Reliance. So those are the schemes of arrangements that SEBI looks into as when it issues of because this is being handled by the Corporation Finance Department. This is exactly what we would be doing in the Future Retail and Amazon and the dispute that is going on between Future Retail, Reliance and Amazon. As we mentioned earlier, there is something called, we are reviewing I think the decision that has come out in yesterday's board meeting are the last 2 points that I'm mentioning here, where we have done away with the minimum minimum promoter contribution in case of a further public offering. As we mentioned in a rights issue, there is no requirement of any minimum promoter contribution. And when a rights issue is very little difference between a rights issue and a full-on public offer. On similar lines, we have done away with the minimum public promoter contribution for a further public offer. And the other decision that the board has taken yesterday is where companies that are coming out of insolvency processes, there we have prescribed that there should be a minimum public shareholding in such companies. So there was one instance where there was a company that came out of the insolvency process, and you would remember the name of Ruchi Soya. Patanjali was the resolution applicant. So there the public holding was just in a fraction. So I think it was 1.38 or something like that. So this was not good for the simple reason because the minimum public shareholding is aimed at ensuring that there are minimum number of shares available, adequate number of shares available in the public domain, so that there is no manipulation or there is no, as you have money that is flowing free, so also you should have shares that are adequate, which can be traded in the particular market. So we have reviewed the norms for minimum public shareholding. We have ensured that as when the company comes out of a resolution process, it should have at least minimum 5% of its minimum public shareholding should be at least 5%, which it can increase up to 10% in the 1 year. And then in the remaining 25%, it can satisfy in the next 2 years. So this is basically what recent reforms we have done. While Mr. Amarjit had mentioned some COVID-related measures, I have outlined 1 or 2 COVID-related measures here, but the entire list is anyway available on the SEBI website. But 1 or 2 things that I would like to mention is where flexibility of the issue size. So when you are undergoing stress, especially during COVID times, there's a lot of pressure on you to raise capital. You may have submitted a prospectus with SEBI, which we have already reviewed. However, now you need to resize your issue either downwards or upwards. So you can do that up to 50% without filing the prospectus again with us. This is more or less what I wanted to cover on the issue trends and issuances, trends in the primary issuances. I have been able to cover it in 42 minutes. In case there are any questions, I'll happy to take and answer.
So, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Devi.
Wonderful presentation. I think in case there are any questions, participants can please either put up on the chat box or they can unmute themselves and ask the question, please. So, Mr. Mathur there, Mr. A.K. Mathur is. Okay, I would take this opportunity to formally put up a vote of thanks, formally. The session today was especially organized, in the interest of the all the investors who are currently what we have seen over a period of time in the last couple of months with a lot of activity in a lot of millennials, people who are in the age bracket of 22 to 36. Some of them could join today while we try and simplify this knowledge, because we have seen a lot of activity happening in the IPO market with money being made, wealth being created. And we are so very thankful to Mr. Amarjit Singh, Executive Director, SEBI, and Shri Jeevan Sonparato ji for taking out time and sharing this valuable information. While it will be also available on our we will have it on the on recording also, because some of the people have messaged from Indian industries and all that we would be needing that recording. What we have seen actually last year, 2 years back, Mr. Singh was here in Lucknow, and I can recollect that there was a lot of queries and questions in people. What in last 2 years, a lot of things have changed, and this year has been a tremendous year for money being raised through IPOs. Over I think 45,000 crore with that, and then what Mr. Jeevan just shared, I think about 60,000 crore with rights issue and all. So we have seen huge activity, and it's so very contemporary and relevant today for investors to understand the nitty-gritties of the primary market and take due precaution. And in terms of I would say the ease of applying for the shares, I can recollect when Mr. Jeevan was sharing that the long queues in front of my bank. I worked in banking, and in the 90s there used to be long धक्का मुक्की होती थी उस समय शेयर एप्लीकेशन बंडल लेके लोग आते थे. And today in a matter of 2 minutes you can just on a click of button you can apply for a share, while the probability of getting allotment has become, I would say, reduced. There were a lot of anomalies, I would say, with people applying with different names, with different surname, different middle name and all that. All those things have been removed. So the fair and transparent way of applying in the IPO market has really helped the market and also the investors. With the UPI and ASBA, your money is not blocked for a very long period. So a lot of these initiatives have helped the investor very much. So what is very important, and which actually we at Evoke India Foundation and also through Lucknow management, we have been doing in all the districts of UP, we have been covering these issues in our programs, in the investor awareness webinars, bringing it out in whatever best possible simplified language to the people, and especially the millennials, the youngsters who I have seen them asking a lot of questions and interested in, investing in the markets. But the kind of money being made, in a very short span of time with the success of the issues these days, I think that is something which is very, very important. And I hope this session has really made a difference to everyone's knowledge and added value. I'm once again very thankful to Jeevan sir, who is here, and because Mr. Singh had a meeting. So thank you very much, sir. If there are no questions, it's very, very, I would grateful to you, all of us from Evoke India Foundation, from all the participants here, LMA members. We extend our, thanks to you, and also to the participants who are attending this program. We are very thankful. I can see a lot of people from the academic fraternity, from senior people, Dr. Firdaus, Dr. Vinay Kandpal from Uttarakhand, from even Dr. Anil Dubey, Professor Anil Dubey. I can see a lot of people, Registrar of IIT, Shri K.K. Tiwari ji. So a lot of people senior who are actually influencers in their own right. And I'm sure these takeaways from these sessions, when we take to our institutions, will really help the youngsters, the young community, which is now entering into the capital markets. We still find a lot of, inhibition in people and an understanding of share markets that, okay, this is all a speculative thing, but that thing is changing actually. The amount of demat accounts opened in the last 6 months has been huge, which is what we learned, from Shri G.P. Garg, who was in another conclave, who addressed the members here in Lucknow. So I'm so thankful to you, sir. In case anything parting thoughts you have, otherwise we would like to close it formally. I think you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Dwivedi ji, and to your foundation for having us here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. Thank you. All the best. Thank you.